Hello, my name is Craig Johnson, and I am the Provincial Communications Officer for the province of Yorkshire West Riding. And I am joined today by James Newman, who is the Provincial Grand Master and also the most excellent Grand Superintendent. Hello to you, James.
Hello there, Craig.
Hello there. Well, thank you for joining me. So this is what we hope will be a series of questions and answers to various people throughout the province. And the first one, Provincial Grand Master, most excellent Grand Superintendent, I'd like to ask you is, how did you first come to join Freemasonry?
Well, I was very lucky in that my father and grandfather on my father's side were both Freemasons, and my great-grandfather on my mother's side had also been a Freemason. The families knew each other but never thought they'd be united, but at the end of the day, they were all involved in Yorkshire Freemasonry. So I suppose I didn't really have a choice. I was the eldest son, and that was the thing to do at the time, that I was going to join my father at the time and a number of uncles who were members of Hadassah Lodge in Sheffield.
So Freemasonry very much in the family then. And what
Yes,
family have you got?
What family have I got?
Yes.
Wife Leslie. I've got three sons, aged between 46 and 26. The elder two are both Freemasons. One is slightly lapsed in that he lives in Guernsey. The other has done well and has been a Met Grand Steward, and is involved quite heavily in London Freemasonry. And I've got five grandsons, so lots of future Freemasons.
Right, okay, that's super. Okay, so you've had a long and distinguished career. Can you tell us in summary what you did and continue to do for a living?
It has been very long. I qualified as a chartered accountant in Sheffield, came out of the profession pretty quickly, lectured to trainees and students for 3 years on how to become a chartered accountant, and passed the exams. Spent the rest of my executive career in industry, mainly as FD of a number of PLCs, virtually all in the north of England, not all in Yorkshire, but most of them in Yorkshire. And about 20 years ago, I went non-executive and built a second career as a non-executive director. So I've chaired two local enterprise partnerships in Sheffield and in Hull and East Yorkshire, which I'm currently chairman of, a number of PLCs, a number of venture capital companies, the most notable being Finance Yorkshire, where I've been chairman for 15 years and about to retire, interim chairman and deputy chairman before that of Sheffield Hallam University, and chairman of a number of charities, community foundations, and of course MCF and the RMBI. In between that, I've been involved in the European programme. I'm on the national board for the European programme, and I was Master Cuckler in Sheffield about 12 years ago. So pretty full all the time, despite not going a 9-to-5 job over the last 20 years.
That's quite a CV. So you are now both Provincial Grand Master and Most Excellent Grand Superintendent. So I'm sure people will be intrigued to know, what does that involve?
What does that involve? Well, firstly, I wasn't expecting to do the role, especially both of the orders. They were split in this province, as you know, for the last 8 years. I'd retired from MCF after 5 years, and we'll perhaps talk about MCF later. I was expecting to follow on as president of MCF, having been deputy president and chairman. But circumstances, COVID changed a lot of thinking, I think, in Grand Lodge. There was a new strategy in its infancy. There was some new personnel coming through at UGLE, and I think they felt that a number of the larger provinces and we are the 5th largest province outside of London, needed to have people responsible for both orders and also be able to follow through the new strategy for 5 years. So I got a call one day, didn't decide immediately because it is a time-consuming role, but in the end, delighted that I've been able to take the job, and I'm very privileged to be able to do so. Historically, this province has always had a joined up PGM and Grand Superintendent. I think the last time it was separated was in the late 1920s, when Viscount Lascelles, who was Earl of Harwood, became PGM, and then he became Grand Master. So his deputy PGM, Richard Gill, became Grand Superintendent. But that, as I say, was in the late 20s. So what is it like? Busy. UGLE strategy is now very much focused on a single province, with both orders very much now a single order. The strapline, one journey, one organization, is very much to the fore. For me, as I say, it was a bit of an eye-opener, and it's been a huge learning curve over the last 18 months, as I wasn't really involved in the province before I was appointed. I've never been a ruler, as most PGMs or Grand Superintendents are. So the challenge was to bring the executive, the functional teams, firstly to accept me as a slightly outsider in terms of the provincial structure, but also to come together as a single unit to become a single province. So I think that was the biggest challenge. I think that's now been more or less achieved, and I think is working well. I think most people in the province I talk to have accepted that particular strategy as being a very sensible one, and one which they've all, most people have embraced. Doing both jobs is daunting, but I have to say that it's been much easier being head of both. I don't think I could have achieved as much if I was only head of one of them, especially as we're now on this single journey. I would suspect that if you were separated, you would always have to consult your counterpart in the other order, not just me, but the team as well, and at functional level, if anything was going to change or happen. So I think this is the way forward. And over the last 18 months, it's been interesting that many provinces who've historically been split have now come together, and a joint appointment has been made. So we've got hardly any provinces left now, probably half a dozen, no more, and I suspect they'll change fairly shortly, that are single headers, with both somebody in the craft and somebody in the Royal Arch. And that's, I think, the way forward. And it's, as I say, it's certainly made my job much easier, being able to make decisions on behalf of both provinces.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for that. And you mentioned a little bit earlier about the MCF, the Masonic Charitable Foundation. What was your role at the MCF, and what does it do?
Well, I started working for Masonic Charities 10 years before MCF was created. And I was very lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. The treasurer of the RMBI at the time was stepping up to become president. I happened to be sat next to him at lunch. I was qualified and I got the job. And then, having done treasurer for 7 years, became the chairman of the RMBI, and then the president of the RMBI. So I was pretty well established within the national charity function. There were 3 other national charities, all doing different things, all quite sizable, interestingly enough, but they were doing things in a different way. And I'm sure that there are many people in the province who will be listening and watching this that will remember where they had to make applications to 4 different charities for 4 different things. And they got 4 different answers because each charity dealt with things in a different way. Very similar to the sort of structure in the province, which I've just talked about. We needed to bring the charities together. The original idea for bringing the charities together was first mooted in 1973, believe it or not, in the Bagnall report. At that time, there were only 3 charities, and then other charities were. Grand Charity was created. The Samaritan Fund was created. So we had this situation where there were a number of charities at national level, all doing different things. Freemasonry does move in slow form sometimes, and it took 43 years for this particular merger to happen. It took us about 6 or 7 years for the presidents and the CEOs of the charities to convince Grand Lodge that this was the time to bring them all together. Anyway, we did this 2015. I was appointed the chairman of the trustees, all 24 of them, 6 from each charity. And then in 2016, in April, I was appointed deputy president, which was a new acting office within Grand Lodge. The president of the Grand Charity became the president of MCF, and our 2 roles was to represent Grand Lodge on the trustee board. In addition, I had the job of chairing the trustees and being the official and, I suppose, legal head of the organisation. So MCF suddenly became this huge national charity. Nobody knew our name. We had almost $500 million of assets. So we were by far the largest organisation structure within Freemasonry in the UK. So we had a huge amount to do. I was very lucky, and we had a number of good executives. We had some really good trustees. So we set about raising the profile of the charity, making sure that all the policies and activities were one. We were able for the first time ever to communicate with provincial Grand Masters. Up until that time, a president of a charity had to go through the Grand Secretary if you wanted to communicate with a provincial Grand Master. So MCF, I suppose, was the first time that we had an organisation structure within Freemasonry at national level that had the ability to raise the profile of Freemasonry and bring some efficiencies into the whole charitable activity. So we created a 5-year strategy, and hopefully, I think we did a pretty good job. So MCF now does a huge amount of charitable giving, both outside and inside Freemasonry. We support a huge number of programs for Freemasons in terms of their health programs, education, children, older people, and there probably isn't that much that MCF doesn't do to support a Freemason if he needs that support, and not only the Freemason, but of course his family as well. And it is important for everybody to realise that family members are entitled to that support if their relation is a Freemason or has been a Freemason. My job as chairman was to promote all of that within the provinces. I had to report into the Deputy Grand Master, whose job was to look after the charities for Grand Lodge. I ran trustee meetings, made sure board committees did their job, recruited and retired trustees, promoted the charity, went round provinces, and we started to do activities like having festivals for the MCF, as all the previous charities had. So a huge amount of time, spent a lot of time in London, probably down there almost once a week, 3 times a month at least, and traveling around the provinces. So it was a pretty full-on responsibility, really. Not a lot different to what I'm doing now, except I'm doing it all.
Just the travels, not going down to London, it's going around the provinces. I've often seen you on your travels, and you often pop up on Facebook as well.
Yeah. So I'm very proud of what we achieved. I think Grand Lodge recognised how important MCF is in their new strategy. And at the end, I was delighted to be made a Grand Vice President, which entitles me to not a lot, but I'm entitled to attend all of MCF's annual general meetings and extraordinary meetings if I wish to do so. But I think it's best to leave them to get on and do the job that they're doing very well at the moment.
Right. Okay. So we're about to go into a festival for the MCF, and some of the brethren watching and listening may not know what a festival is. So what is a festival?
Well, a festival is 2 things, really. It's a fundraising activity for MCF. There have been festivals, Masonic festivals, for centuries of various kinds. They've been structured probably for the last 100 years or so. When there were more Masonic charities than just MCF, each charity had a festival with a province in a structured way, so that the province only did a festival once every 11 years. So they had 5 years to do a festival, i.e. fundraise on behalf of that particular charity, and 6 years where they could raise money if they wished to do so for other charities more locally based. So a festival is fundraising, but it is also a way of bringing a province together, having fun, embracing your families, getting your families involved, having social activities, doing silly things if that is what required, throwing provincial grandmasters out of aeroplanes or along zip wires or up a mountain or whatever. The provincial grandmaster and his other rulers, I must emphasize, they don't get away with it, other rulers are asked to do to help raise money, but also have some fun as well. And that's essentially what a festival is. It raises money for MCF so that they can do the work that they did in the same way that it used to raise money. Our last festival in this province was for the RMBI. That allowed them to do the work in running the care homes that they do for our elderly brethren and their families, and what a good job that they do.
Right, okay, just to explain that the RMBI is a Royal Masonic Benevolent Institution, which of course runs our local homes, is that right?
That is right, that is part of MCF, and was very privileged to become president of that and to run that particular charity for about 6 years. And it does a wonderful job in 17 homes across the country. The nearest home to this province is at Connaught Court, which I hope most of the brethren will have either visited or at least supported at some point in time. And it's a great place to go and visit. And I hope that some of the money that we will raise during this festival will help the RMBI and the other charities to continue to support brethren as and when they need it.
Great. Okay. So MCF very much our national charity then. So I've noticed that you're wearing a different tie. Can you tell a little bit about it?
Well, this is the new provincial tie. There is a red version, which is for those members of the Royal Arch, and this one is for the craft, for members of the craft. You can, for those who are members of the Royal Arch, you can wear either tie in a craft meeting, but only the Royal Arch tie in a Royal Arch meeting. They've been designed so that they're made as simple as possible. This is the official Yorkshire West Riding crest, shield, approved and everything by the Court of the Chamber, the London Chamberlain, and the colour is as near as we could get it to a provincials and Grand Lodge apron, so that it didn't clash, or at least fixed in. Likewise, the red tie is redder than the current provincial tie, which is probably more burgundy than red. We haven't had a new provincial tie for 15 years or so, so I thought it was about time that we did, and it was a good opportunity to make the ties the same, to demonstrate the joined up relationship between the craft and the Royal Arch.
Right, and of course they're £20 each.
They are
included.
They are £20 each, including postage. But even if you buy them at an event and they're not posted to you, it's still £20. So just want to make that clear to anybody who thinks that they'd like a discount because they've collected it at a meeting. £20. You can get them from the web shop on the provincial website, and there will be some other connected products available soon, a bow tie and a pocket handkerchief to match both the craft and the Royal Arch. So for the next 5 years during the festival, all the profits on these ties are going towards the festival. So I hope that everybody will buy at least one tie, and I hope all the members of the Royal Arch will buy the Royal Arch tie as well.
Right, okay. And I also believe there are some festival wines and spirits available. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I don't know a huge amount. The festival committee have organised this, but there are some special gins and I think beers. We have a craft beer. St. Peter and Harmony number 600 Lodge is part of the Craft Beer Lodges Association, and they have organised through some of their connected breweries some beer. Again, I think these can be purchased through a special section on the provincial and festival sections of the provincial website. All I would ask is if people buy these, lodges should buy them, use them for raffles and other fundraising activities. I hope that some of the Masonic halls that sell, no doubt, quite a bit of gin and quite a few beers might buy them in and sell them as well. Again, all the profit is going towards the festival, and a number of provinces I'm aware of have raised significant sums of money by selling this type of product during
Yeah,
the festival.
absolutely. So the bottled beers are available individually, and the keg beers can also be ordered by your Masonic halls. So
Yes.
there is that great opportunity of having a beer and raising money at the same time. So finally, James, final question. What are your aspirations for the festival? How would you like to see the next 5 years pan out?
The next 5 years for the festival, well, I think I'd like everybody to have fun. I like families to be involved, so they get to know each other. I hope the travelling gavel that we'll be launching in a couple of weeks' time, I hope that goes around the province, and therefore that will mean more visiting, which I'm particularly keen on. More people will know about MCF and what they do, and that MCF themselves will get more applications for support, because the money is there, and it is important that Freemasons who have raised money, we must always remember that certainly the festivals, but in most cases in a province, the only people that contribute either to MCF Festival or even to West Riding Masonic Charities, virtually all that money is raised through Freemasons, and not the general public. Therefore, I hope that Freemasons will utilize the funding that they have helped to contribute to, and if they need help, they will ask for it, and most of the time they'll get it. I hope that more lodges and chapters will look at opening relief chests, which are run by MCF. These administer your funds. They have grown substantially over the years. They're much more accessible in terms of putting money in and being able to take your money out, which you can do almost at a touch of a button now. So I hope more people will do that. More lodges and chapters will do that. I hope more people are attracted to Freemasonry as a result of the publicity that we create through some of the events we have. I hope the profile of the province is raised. Freemasonry gets a positive image. I suppose specifically for Yorkshiremen, I hope that suddenly the rest of the UK consider us to be generous people, as opposed to perhaps the characteristic that sometimes is appended to being a Yorkshireman. I hope we get support from the other orders. We've got strong relationships, personal and also through Freemasonry, with all the other orders in the province. So I hope that those relationships are strengthened as a result. And I suppose finally, my final aspiration for the festival is that we have set a target to try to achieve, which is very aspirational. It's pretty stretching, but I hope with everybody's support that we can hit that target and be proud of what we've achieved.
That's great. James Newman, Provincial Grand Master, Most Excellent Grand Superintendent, thanks ever so much for your time.